Hello, everyone, and welcome to another casual convo. Today we have the lovely Avory Faucette. Thank you so much for joining me, Avory.
Thank you.
So, did you want to tell everybody who will be coming in or will be watching the playback a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I I will say that I first encountered Julie through TarotTube. Some folks may have seen me around. I have my own YouTube channel. I got started with the world of tarot, astrology, intuition, etc. Around late 2017.
Oh, okay.
And it was initially totally just a hobby for me. I'm neurodivergent. I'm a nerd about anything that has systems and structures. Through my own personal healing journey that I did not expect to go on, I ended up quitting a decade-long career in nonprofits, and transitioned from that to starting a business. So I have my own business at queermagical.com. Folks can check it out. And I do a number of different things in it, but really it's all centered around the intersection of healing and justice and, really helping people to be human in tough times. And coming from a queer and neurodivergent perspective, I think helps me to connect with different people. And I see there's already
absolutely, yes.
Fam in the chat.
Hello, Lisa Stevens. Hello, Mistress Ray. Neurodivergence unite. That's awesome. Okay, so shall we do our firsts and favorites to start off?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. So let's start off with the firsts. The first deck you ever bought.
First deck was I always get the name wrong, Starry Cauldron Tarot.
I don't think I know that one.
Yeah, it's very obscure. It's on Etsy, still exists.
Oh, so that's how you found it? You were just searching on Etsy and
yeah, well, because I had started the way I first got exposed to tarot was that I had one oracle card reading. I know this is a quick fire. I'm not gonna do a very good quick fire.
Oh, it's not. I'm not even calling it quick fire anymore. It's just first and favorites because it's never.
That's
quick.
fair. Yeah,
so you're fine.
Cut me off if I go too long because I will. But yeah. So that was my first deck, and I got it because so I'd had an oracle card reading. It was the first card reading I'd ever had in my life. The summer of 2017. And I got kind of vaguely curious, what is this and what is tarot? And, I don't even remember now what my impressions of tarot were before I encountered it. I'm sure I had something,
right?
But I can't remember. And then by coincidence, Michelle T had just come out with Modern Tarot. And Michelle T, I had read a bunch of her fiction because I don't know if she still does, but used to write lesbian fiction.
Yes.
And so from the queer world, I knew Michelle T. And then Michelle T did a tarot book, and I was like, well, I was curious about this thing, so let me just read her book. And I immediately was like, oh, this is really fascinating. I want to learn tarot. So I just Googled tarot deck, probably. And I was drawn to the Starry Cauldron. I can actually, sorry, I'm gonna pop out of frame for a second. I can show it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm sure folks want to see.
Hello, Heather. Nice to see you.
So, yeah, I might have to do this a couple of times if decks come up, but I pulled out a couple to work with. But yeah, so here are just some, so folks can see some examples. So it's watercolor. The artist describes it as use your intuition, and you don't need to know any tarot to start. It was one of those where it was advertised in that way.
I have never seen this one before.
Yeah, no, it's not you never see it on people's. I'm getting used to the flip of the screen.
Yes, I know.
Terrible.
Hi, Zach.
It's a beautiful deck, but it was one of these things where it was you don't need anything to know this. And I was like, it didn't work well.
Impossible for me to use that as a newbie. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that one.
Yeah, because all this bleeds of color, and it's this is beautiful art, but and I was open to the idea of it, but I just really as Heather knows, I really like things that are, what is the grid? What is the instruction? What is the like thing? And that's what unlocks my intuition about tarot. So that was the first
Gotcha.
one, but I very quickly, I
Switched
didn't
to
actually read
something
it
else.
until probably a couple years later. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So then what is the first deck then you ever passed on? So you held on to that one. Are there any that you
First one I passed on. I
or one of
have
the
not
first?
passed on very many, admittedly.
Okay.
Probably the first, I'm not sure, but I will say the first one I remember passing on was probably the Everyday Enchantment. It just didn't really work for, and I feel like it's funny in retrospect, I have felt like there's a card in there that pissed me off, but then I tried to look at pictures. Yeah, because I thought I remembered it being one of these like, ooh, there's something in this deck I do not like. But then I went back, I looked at a walkthrough of it, and I can't figure out what that card was. So maybe it didn't vibe with me, but
yeah. That's one that is so well loved, and it does not vibe with me as well. It just, so Heather does know. She is affirming for you, validating. All right. First deck in your collection that was not RWS inspired. If you have any.
Well, yeah, actually the Next World. So
that's not RWS inspired?
Well, and here's so here's the inspired. This is what I never know when folks say RWS clone versus RWS inspired versus, so it's not that there isn't any RWS in it, but
it diverges.
Portraits, and they're not real, like a lot of them are pretty straight, like the imagery is not the same. So if you say like straight up a different system, that would be okay, because I was gonna say like probably so I haven't actually done much with other systems, but I want to say that what's the Osho Zen, I believe it's Thoth based. So that was probably the first one that I got.
Wow. Okay. Thoth. Okay. First thing you ever started collecting, or one of the first things you ever started collecting, like rocks or maybe some type of memorabilia or
well, I think it would actually be the thing that immediately comes to mind. I've actually been working on a course. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to release it. Sometime soon, not soon enough to say this is the date, right? But like could be anywhere between like a week from now and 3 weeks from now. So folks, definitely I'll release it on my newsletter, which the sign up is at queermagical.com. But it's going to be a course about healing from like productivity wounds and kind of reframing productivity, because I'm such a nerd about systems and structures, and then like weaving in the mindset piece of that. And so in this course, I tell various stories about kind of how my mindsets change over the years. And one of the examples I give, which I think probably would be the first thing I really collected, is not a physical item. I've never been, well, until tarot, I've never been. I was gonna say, no, I am. But before that, I wasn't. No, it was actually recipes. So I loved reading. My dad had like a recipe book collection growing up, and he was pretty depressed, and so there wasn't like a lot to do when I was at his house. I was an only child, so I'd go back and forth, and
gotcha.
2 people in the house, right? And so I got fascinated with this recipe collection. And it wasn't very many, maybe like 10 books, but I would just read these things over and over. Or I'd like for fun go to the Index of Joy of Cooking and be like, is there something I don't know? Yeah, not that I was cooking that much.
I was going to say, did you like cooking?
Well, no, I mean, I wanted to. Whenever I was allowed to play in the kitchen, I totally would. But it was less about the cooking itself than just, it was weirdly soothing for me to like pull together a collection. And so, once I got older and the internet was a thing, and having your own computer was a thing. When I was going off to college, I like typed them all up because I didn't want to leave my beloved recipes behind. And eventually I had, a database, and I had a food blog for 5 years. At the peak, I had over 10,000 recipes.
Wow.
But the thing I learned from that is, you're never going to cook 10,000 recipes. And also, if you have 10,000 recipes in your database and you're trying to find like one thing, then you can just kind of be like,
wow.
Well, it's much smaller now, but that was probably the first collection. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And Heather's saying, I would say Next World is RWS inspired personally, but I do know what,
Inspired.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
know what
think
you
I think my brain was thinking more like, what's the deck that's not like RWS imagery?
No, totally. I
That's a
totally
different
get what you
question.
mean.
But yeah,
Totally
totally.
get what you mean. And also, Heather and I do not collect recipes because Heather and I do not like to cook. Am I right, Heather? Like, we really do not
Are
like to
y'all
cook
like anti? Yeah,
unless she's, huh?
the
Go ahead.
beautiful thing about cooking is that I always was really like wanted to be someone who cooked.
So
I
do
also
I.
grew up on cooking shows. Like I don't know if you ever watched the old like PBS, but I would watch
Mm,
like reruns of Julia Child or just like before the Food Network existed, they were all
yeah.
on PBS, and and I always thought that would be really cool. And then I think that the busyness, we were just starting with chatting about this before we started, that I used to live in DC, and we're
Mhm.
talking about the sort of like culture of DC being very busy, busy, busy.
Yes.
I was for a large part of my nonprofit career, I was commuting 6 hours a day. So
Oh
it's about
my,
2.5 one way and 3.5, because I always lived in Baltimore because I couldn't afford to actually live in DC. And so I
wow.
take the train, a couple buses back and forth.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I always like wanted to be someone who cooks, but who's going to have time? And so now that I've
exactly.
quit that career and am setting my own schedule, it's like, it's really nice actually. Like I've gotten back to just being like, oh, cooking isn't that hard or doesn't take that much time. It's just, yeah,
Yeah,
making
no,
space for
totally.
it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think for myself, it's now I do have time, since I'm remote working. And so I don't
Mhm.
have to deal with, I mean, my commute wasn't two and a half hours like one way, but it was over an hour one way.
So,
So
yeah,
it just still draining. So I just become more of a functional cook, I would say. A functional cook so that I just
totally.
don't die, as Heather would say. No,
Really? Well, and I
I do
like Heather. Yeah, heating up or ordering delivery are very important skills. I applaud you. And I have actually moved back from the fancy stuff because, like, when I
Mm,
was looking, one thing I realized that was kind of a weirdly spiritual like realization that helped me to cull back my recipe collection was I realized that it's so important when you're like uh, creating any kind of system, whether that's like your tarot journal or whatever it is, that it's really important to know like what is the function and what is it serving for me, like what is it doing for me. And I think as I was
exactly.
building up the collection, what it was doing for me is it was helping me to dream of a world
Mm,
where a time where I might have access to ingredients I didn't have growing up in the South, like a time where
I
I
see what
might
you mean.
be
Yeah.
able to have cuisines that there were no recipes or no restaurants, excuse me, for in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it was really like a dreaming thing. And then over time, I think it became a soothing thing where it was just
Mhm.
like, it was soothing to literally type, recipes up, and it became that like the doing of it. And
Oh,
then when I
yeah,
got
I
to the
can see
point of
that.
like, no, I want, to cook, that's a different function from I'm inspired by this. And so a big part of what I've done in the name of functional cooking is I've removed anything where I look at it and go, I could make that, but it would be a pain in the ass, and it's
Yeah,
probably not going to turn out as well as it looked. I realized it was like
exactly.
I like these recipes because I wanted to eat them, not because
Right.
I necessarily wanted
You
to
want to make them.
make the effort.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I totally support that. Now my
Yeah.
favorite recipes are the ones that are like 30 minutes. Let's
Yeah.
do it. That's what you need.
Okay. Do you have a favorite pet from, like,
I
childhood
don't have a pet. I have
or
never.
first pet, sorry, first pet.
Oh, well, okay. So I have never had a pet
Ah,
except. I generally say I've never had a pet. Technically, for 1 week, I had a secret mouse. Um, uh, like an actual, like not like the mouse lived in the house, but like I had a mouse that was my pet, right?
oh, okay.
It was a trend in high school. Everyone randomly bought mice and had these little plastic spheres that they like to run around in.
Oh,
So you
yes,
put the
yes.
mouse in, and then the
Yeah.
sphere goes around, right? So in high school, it'd be like these spheres rolling around the classroom of people's mice. And and the boy I had a crush on at the time had a mouse. So I was like, I'm gonna be cool and get a mouse. So I walked like probably 3 miles to a pet store, bought a mouse and what it needed, snuck the mouse, lived in a Tupperware box under my bed with holes cut so it could breathe. And my mom did not find out about it. But then I had to go on vacation and gave it to somebody who said they would watch my mouse. And really, they had a snake. So they just ran my mouse.
They fed that
So
is
that was my only experience. He was also named Lance after the InSyncer.
oh,
If
yes.
anyone's familiar. Yeah. So I was
Mhm.
like,
Oh, absolutely, I know
what a
Lance,
boy.
but and also how fucked up that your friend would
This
feed
kid.
your pet mouse to their snake.
I know.
I would not forgive that person. I would be very salty.
He was a special child.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I suppose.
This
Okay,
guy,
well,
yeah.
wow, okay.
So I brought it down. The pet store probably supposed to be like a happy question.
It is,
Yeah.
but you're not the only one to have kind of traumatic pet stories. Like Bennabelle was talking about how her in-laws killed her one cat, and like it just was
Right.
not.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yes,
Yeah. I'm so
they
sorry for
did.
everyone who is now traumatized.
They did. Yeah. Okay. So how about first movie you saw in a theater that you can remember?
That I can remember would be. Oh, you know what I think it was? I think it was Little Mermaid. Yeah.
That's a good one to see
Yeah.
in the theater.
Yeah,
That's a
because I
good
think I was
one.
like 3 or I was 4. I think it was like 89 when it came out. Yeah, and I got like all Little Mermaid sheets, like
Oh, yeah.
everything was Ariel. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I approve. That was like one of my favorite Disney princess movies. First celebrity crush.
um, it's so interesting to think about that because I'm like, what is the age at which it becomes a crush? I feel like it's
That's
just
fair.
like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
from like I'm really excited about this celebrity to like, no, I have a crush on the celebrity, but probably I mean, it's gonna be a boy band member. As much as I wish I had a cooler answer, I'm pretty sure the real answer is gonna be
An
who is my
NSYNCer?
favorite? Well, I was, so
Backstreet Boys?
I was the most passivist boy band fan. I liked NSYNC. I like Backstreet Boys. I like
New
98 Degrees. I
New
like
Kids?
Five. New Kids was
Might have been
just
too.
before I got into it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm showing my age. Okay.
No, it's okay. I probably like 2 or 3 years younger. It's like just the cutoff because at that age it matters so much, right?
Right.
Like, if you're 1 year younger. But yeah. Although, actually, I'm gonna change my answer.
Okay.
I'm gonna call this a crush retroactively. So I
Okay.
remember watching Spice World in the movie theater with my mother. And there was this scene, and I don't remember anything about the plot of the movie, but there's a scene where I think Posh Spice is driving a bus. And I just remember the image of Posh Spice's like silver stiletto heel hitting the accelerator and being like, I feel funny and I don't know why. And I think that might be my first.
Okay. Posh was always my favorite out of all of them.
Nice.
Posh was my favorite as well. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Like, I mean, she just was.
I mean, she's just so put together. Like, I
think
think I
that's
just
what it
love
is.
the idea of being like
Put
I just
together and
always
just
look like I stepped out of a photo shoot.
yeah, and she just had a more like calm, I think, demeanor, like less,
That's true.
chaotic. I don't know, but yeah, she was my favorite too for a long time. Okay. First major move to another town, state, or country.
It was, yeah, I was like, I'm not forgetting anything. No, it would have been college. So I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. I lived in the same house 18 years. And then my mom still lives there. And yeah, I went to, it's called the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Most
Okay, yeah,
people,
I know.
UMBC. Yeah, people in the area have heard of it.
We
but most
know.
people haven't.
Yeah, we
I
know.
had not heard of it when I can't even remember why I applied. It's like so many universities, when you're a junior in high school, you just get like all these brochures. And I was like, this brochure looks fun. So yeah, I moved to just outside of Baltimore.
Awesome. No one remembers that. I didn't. Was there a plot? Yeah, exactly. That's what I was wondering. I don't know if I ever saw that.
There might have been a plot.
And Heather is very proud that she has never seen, and she's British.
The UK has so many better exports for you to
I agree.
Roll on to.
First paycheck.
Yeah, I guess it could. I'm like, I babysat, but that's not so much a paycheck. So my
Still
first
counts.
actual pay, yeah, like my first job would be babysitting, but my first paycheck was probably working for like a residence hall. Like I wasn't a RA, but the people at the desk. So I just
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
admin
yeah, that was my
okay.
first job.
Awesome.
And it was all hours. So I remember like at one point I just always worked the 3 to 7 a.m. shift.
Oh my
because
God.
I liked that, I guess.
You like that?
I liked being alone. I liked that there was no work to do, right? Because you're
That's
sitting at
true.
your desk just being a body in a chair,
Yes, that's
right?
true.
So yeah, so I think I was like writing fan fiction most of the time, and like
Hey, yeah, and
no
then
one
getting
would ever
paid.
come by. Yeah,
Okay.
so that was my middle of the night weird job. Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to favorites. So then, speaking of your collection of recipes, do you have a favorite recipe from there?
Ooh, huh. That's an excellent question. I think it would. Oh, it is like choosing a baby a little bit, but I think it would. Well, I think I go to like sentimental things, and then but a lot of the so I'm vegan, so a lot of the sentimental stuff that I grew up with is kind of hard to veganize.
Mm,
So, but I think it would probably actually be there's a mushrooms bourguignon, so like beef bourguignon, but it's mushrooms.
fancy.
Recipe. I want to say it's Smitten Kitchen. That blog is people who are into food will probably know that blog,
Probably, yeah.
and it's because it brings back the sense memories of things like beef stew, but it's
Mhm.
not beef stew.
Right, right.
So yeah, that's probably my
Exactly.
favorite.
A favorite thing that you like to shop for other than decks?
Yeah, it is Dex. Other than Dex, my favorite thing would be it's so funny because all my money does go into Dex. I guess I would say no, I would say I really like party games. So I like board games in general, but
Uh-huh.
specifically, of course, it's the pandemic right now, and even before then, I struggled to get 6 people in a room at the same time. But I still buy them anyway, in hopes that one day. And yeah, I like party and casual games,
Okay,
or games that are
cool.
just like they don't take a lot to learn.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Just a good
that
fun
would be it.
time. Okay. How about a favorite movie or show?
Hmm. I'm not a big watcher of things, or I should say I watch YouTube rather than movies and shows. But uh in general, Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm a
Oh, okay.
huge Marvel fan. And
Same.
picking a favorite is like picking a baby once again, but I would probably go with the Winter Soldier
Really?
or Black Panther. Yeah, it's what but Winter
Okay,
Soldier, I
okay,
think as a movie, I really liked it. I really liked how it developed characters. Um,
okay.
And then Black Panther, I like probably tied just because of what it was, but
Black Panther
also
was great. That was a great
because of what
movie.
it was, but also I thought besides being what it was and being a really good like storytelling moment, it's just so beautiful. The way they did
It's
Wakanda,
it is
I was
beautiful.
so afraid that they were going to not do it well, and so
Yeah. I
that was
think they did knock it out of the park.
yeah.
So UMBC is an honor.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I know. Yeah, I am familiar with this.
I did not know.
It was, to be fair, Lisa, when I went, so I went from 2003 to 2006. So I actually was drawn in by the Honors College and they have like a humanities scholarship program.
Okay.
They're generally kind of a tech or science, more that kind of school.
Yes.
And so they want to pay people to come for other disciplines. So, I mean,
Exactly.
I do tell people like the best school is the one that will pay you to go there. And that's definitely true. But yeah, it used to be a commuter school, and it was definitely the kind
Gotcha.
of place. It was weird coming from somewhere where I'd lived all my life to show up and like no one was from out of state. So I was like this
Yeah.
sparkly different person, and that was an interesting experience. But yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, I knew Heather would have this reaction. Heather has feelings about Captain America in general, so
Oh,
we'll just leave it at that.
I don't know. Sometime, Heather, I'm going to tell you about how Steve Rogers is the secret, probably communist superhero we all deserve.
Okay.
That's my headcanon. But we'll move on.
Yeah.
We'll move on.
How about your a favorite curse word?
Oh, I mean, it seems so boring to say fuck, but it is. I mean,
It's just
I use
so
it a lot.
perfect. It's so
Yeah,
perfect.
I was like trying to think, is there a particular phrase with fuck that I tend to use? But no, I think it's just fuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm all for it. And then, okay, surprise bonus question. Okay. Kiss, marry, kill.
Oh, okay.
Of these three,
Okay.
which one would you kiss, marry, and kill? Spacious Tarot, Many Queens Tarot, and the Lubango.
Oh, I have to kill one of those. That's so rude.
Sorry.
Oh, Oh, okay. I'm in pain about the murder. Oh no, here's my cop out. So I'm gonna say kill the Lubanko, but I'm gonna kill the Lubanko in some sort of like fabulous fiery way, because I feel like it's a very like horror inspired, like it's got some of that like in it. So I feel like you could do a cool dramatic death scene with the Lubanko, and the deck would appreciate that.
Okay.
So we're gonna say that, and then kiss the many queens, marry the spacious, because the many queens is such fabulous people. You just want to make out with them.
It's
and
a very, yeah. Okay.
And I feel like the spacious, as something to just be with you as a partner, is very like, it holds space. And if you're going to marry someone, you want them to hold space.
I can understand your reasoning. Nicely done. Nicely done.
What would you have said? Do you know?
I would have said probably I would have said kiss the Lubanko, marry the spacious tarot, and kill the many queens.
Kill the many queens, yeah.
Because I feel like the many queens is also one of those decks where it's like it would appreciate a fab death scene.
I think that's probably true as well. Yeah.
I think it wouldn't mind it. Like it would go out in style kind of thing. So hi, everyone coming into the chat. Hi, Beth.
Oh, we've got all the Marvel opinions coming in.
Yeah, I know.
Emerald. Thor Ragnarok is hilarious. Taika Waititi as a director.
Oh, he's
probably
great.
my favorite director.
He's great
of anything. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
But yes, Shang-Chi is really.
Still thinking about the. I agree. I agree, Heather. Shang-Chi is like so good. Oh, they really.
Yeah.
That is what representation is. Thank you very much. So, let's see. Haven't seen it yet. I know.
No spoilers on any Marvel movies, so y'all can watch at your own pace.
Exactly.
Even I, as like a dedicated fan, I'm still behind on. I haven't seen Eternals yet, or the new what is it, Moon Knight?
I haven't seen that one either. Yeah, and I have seen Eternals. It was okay. But yeah, I think actually the only one I might not have seen, movie wise, would be the Captain Marvel. Wait.
Oh yeah, Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That one. I haven't seen that one, and I haven't seen WandaVision or some of those other ones that are on Disney Plus, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now actually talking about, tarot and witchy things.
Okay.
So you were saying how you didn't quite remember how tarot came up as an interest for you or anything like that. But as a kid, did you feel like you were kind of always interested in like witchy things and woo things, or?
Yeah, no, not really. Well, actually it's a yes and it's a no. So I think I never identified with any particular, whether it's like being a witch or a religion or anything like spiritual stuff. I grew up, so my dad's a pretty staunch atheist. My mom is one of so she's the age to be, you can just imagine in your head like the now aging hippie lady who likes to explore all the religions and may or may not be aware of the implications of that, but noted. But I grew up like we would read, like we had a tradition of like reading the Book of Tao under the Christmas tree. So it was a very like blending of influences,
kind of.
and
Okay.
right. And so like when I was younger, I was very much more naturally like out in nature a lot. So I would for sure like sing and dance in the trees and climb trees and try to balance on things. And like I loved being alone and I loved being in nature. And I think it's easy to go back in retrospect and be like, oh yes, I was a little witchy child, but like I would never put it that way,
Right, exactly.
There was the brief period when I was 16, my first girlfriend. So I sort of like realized I was queer, and then very shortly after met a girl on gay.com, because this was before like dating sites. There was just a site called gay.com, and that's where you went if you were gay.
Straight to the point,
It's very to the
no
point.
beating around the bush there.
Found another teenager my age in the area, and we started dating, and she was into Wicca and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so
Mm.
Yeah, and she kind of got me into, so Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuck and the Wicca didn't, but
Okay. I
that
was
was
gonna then
like,
ask.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I would say I was just very focused on like school learning, things that seemed to me to be different from the spiritual realm.
Gotcha.
Although now I would blend them, but yeah. So it was really as
Yeah.
an adult that I found this path.
Gotcha. So then
Yeah.
would you describe yourself as a witch now or
Um,
a
you know,
pagan or
I don't use that term,
yeah.
and yet it's been interesting because I sort of I asked myself about it. I mean, it's really funny. I can like go back on my old social media and there's probably, like I'm a witch declaration, and then I'm not sure I'm a witch anymore. Right? Um, for me, like my initial thing was like, am I feeling disconnected from witch because I'm non-binary? And so do I want
Mm,
to
have
claim
that
that
label.
term,
Yeah.
kind of grow into it and get comfortable? And I ultimately came to the conclusion that I don't think it actually was a gender thing. It was more, so I don't do any spell work, which doesn't, like, not all witches do spell work, but I
Right.
but I don't. And I'm not interested in any kind of group practices.
Hmm.
Um and I tend to like not resonate very well with anything that's kind of like, here is how you do it, or like, here is how you communicate with divine and you follow these steps.
Yeah, very
um
prescriptive. Yeah.
it's hard for
Yeah.
me. So if there was anything I was drawn to with witchcraft, it would probably be like kitchen witchery. I'm really into plant medicine, and I don't know a lot, but I want to learn about herbalism and
Hmm.
that kind of thing. But the terms I would use, but then people wouldn't understand them outside of tarot, is like I much more relate. I actually channeled this. There's a few things I channeled right when my ability to channel came in, which happened very suddenly, in 2020.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it was the full moon in Pisces. So it was like October-ish, September-ish of 2020. And I had been working with tarot and like developing my intuition, but it was the first time I ever like directly had something that was coming from outside me. Um, and one of the things I channeled in that moment was that my energy is like meant to be a blend of high priestess and magician.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
like, that is like, I'm like, if I identify with anything, it would be high priestess and magician together. Um,
Very cool.
but only tarot people get that.
Very
It's
cool.
very
No,
well
I
as like
get
a brand that you put on
very cool.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you had read Modern Tarot from Michelle T. Are there any other resources that you felt kind of really helped you to kind of find your path with tarot?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anybody who's familiar with my channel has heard me mention, my primary tarot teacher is Lindsay Mack, and she
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
definitely a big. I mean, her influence is really strong, like in my work, and she continues to be sort of my like main source. Although I don't like to stick in one with one person, but when I
Sure.
started learning, yeah, I read Modern Tarot. And then I want to say right around that time, Lindsay was doing a course on court cards. And court cards
Mhm.
were the hardest for a lot of beginners, right?
Sure,
For me as
sure.
well. I was just like, oh no, court cards. And so I had like heard a couple episodes of her podcast and was just like,
Mhm.
I don't know, generally this energy works with me. And I think it's the combination of like really incorporating a kind of justice lens into everything
Yeah,
she does. And then
that's
also
true.
like a really, like it's a non-bypassy way of like really focuses a lot on like enoughness and like everything is okay and
Mhm.
that kind of thing without it being like and ignore the rest of the world.
Right,
And
right.
that was, yeah, so that was really foundational to my learning. And then the Little Red Tarot blog was still
Hmm.
going at the time, and so I
Mhm.
read a lot of like the different contributors to that blog.
Oh, awesome.
It
Okay.
was a pretty strong early influence.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, would you say that you're predominantly you like the RWS the best,
Hmm.
or you said you had maybe a couple like Thoth
Well,
inspired
I
or
haven't really learned Thoth
Mhm.
or Marseille, so I do have a few decks of
Mhm.
each, but and maybe there are other systems, but those are the three that I know. Um, I have a lot of tarot decks that are kind of their own thing,
They're yeah, their own
but
kind of
in
thing. Yeah.
terms of those three main systems, I've really just learned RWS. I didn't think I wanted to learn Marseille at first.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the idea of the pips. And then through hearing people talk about Marseille, Tom Benjamin, among others,
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, no, I mean, I think it would be interesting to learn. I don't know if it would stick around for me.
Yeah.
And then with Thoth, it's like, I want to learn it. I have so many Crowley feelings. At the same time, I know you can separate too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't have to be. But I think that's maybe held me back a little from like
Sure.
putting it high on the interest list,
No,
because
totally.
it's a little
Yeah.
higher to like study things other than tarot. So like
Mhm.
I studied Lenormand for a little
Okay,
bit.
that was going to be my next question. Like
Yeah,
Lenormand
yeah.
or Kipper. I don't know.
All
There's so
those
many
things.
other, or like
Yeah.
Luke even.
Lenormand sorry, I always like go back and forth on how I pronounce it.
Yeah,
Am I
same.
speaking English? Am I speaking French? But yeah, I did actually learn Lenormand largely from a few different lectures I went to all in a row at Northwest Tarot Symposium.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
And I thought like, oh, this could be cool. Actually, I was hanging. I think Lisa and Peggy and I sat next to each other in a few of
Oh,
those
really?
spots. We were all sort of like learning together. And
That's awesome.
and then I have runes that I haven't even touched. Like I
Mhm.
bought them probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it's never been quite the time, but I know it should be at some point, because like I do really relate to stones in general. Not
Oh, cool.
necessarily crystals, but like rocks.
Gotcha.
Quite a lot. So yeah, but I ended up putting down Lenormand because I realized that it's a really accurate predictor, and that's not actually what I want.
Yeah, I know
I
what you
don't actually
mean.
want the answer.
I know what you mean. There was a point where actually, when I was using Lenormand more, and then at one point I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna put this away for a while. I
Yeah.
don't need that straight of an answer.
It's not even like, I think
And
it's more like an ethos thing. It's like, as I've been trying to build the ethos, or the belief, or the value in kind of trusting and understanding that the future is uncertain, and has been a big theme for me, like not sort of staying stuck and stagnant because you think that where you are is safe, but
Mhm.
understanding that like I mean, this could sound like it could be hard to think, oh, well, you were never really safe. Like, that's not a very happy feeling. But at the same time, it's like knowing that, and I think the pandemic brought this up for a lot of people, like the things that we were sure was going to stay forever. Once you take those away, then you're like, oh, well, what else could I do?
Mhm.
And so I've really been trying to lean into that, and lean into the kind of openness to whatever happens. And so any system that's predictive or
And more
leans to
like that. Yeah.
thing, I'm like, it's not that I don't think it can work, or that it's not helpful sometimes, but it wasn't vibing with what I wanted to focus on.
No, totally. And I know that there are plenty of other people who use Lenormand a little more malleably, not as that kind of pat predictor, fortune telling, but more kind of to augment their tarot reading. And it's so I mean there have been
Yeah.
any number of ways that people can, and I've done that a little bit here and there as well. So I think, I mean, I do love the system, and I think it's something that at some point I will come back to. But I've just been
It's
doing other
interesting. I
things.
mean, it's nerdily interesting too. Sometimes I think like learning like can be like, my nerdy side can kick in, because you're trying to be like, okay, what does this mean for the day? Like that was how I was studying it, was doing 3 cards every morning. And it was funny, because in contrast to tarot, where you'll often, if you do a daily draw, sometimes it's really nebulous, and maybe it refers to like something really philosophical. Often with like, you pull Lenormand cards, and then it's like, oh, that was me finding my keys, right?
Yes.
But I would never be able to guess in advance, and then after it happened, I'd be like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it is nice that you can like kind of check your results.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. So you use Oracle as well, right?
I do.
And do you feel like do you find that you prefer one over the other, tarot over Oracle, Oracle over tarot, or you just use them together? You find that they pair well?
I don't have a preference. I will say that it took me a while, and I'm still working on it, to use Oracle as consistently. I mean, not that I use tarot consistently, to be real honest, but to incorporate Oracle more regularly, because I think that when my mine says like I need a check-in or I need like I have a question, I tend to go just naturally towards my tarot. And then
Same.
I'll sometimes layer in, like you said, like use them together. So layer
Right.
in
Right.
Oracle. And I've experimented with different ways of deciding like what decks I'm going to read with over a period of time,
Mhm.
like all sorts of ways of doing that. The way I'm doing
Mhm.
it now is fairly intuitive, but I'm leaving some decks out on my table, and so I'm trying to have a good mix so that it
Gotcha.
reminds me like Oracle exists.
Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, like I don't, I tend to use it with tarot, and I tend to not think to use it without. But I think one of the ways Oracle can be really good is that often pulling a single card works
Yeah.
better than it would with tarot. And so I have to remind myself that that's an option. Um,
Same, actually, now that you took like, speak to that, I am the same way in that I rarely to never use Oracle on its own. I'm usually using it as a clarifier or just, like, following up on tarot, like, together, but, I mean, there have been times where I have, but
yeah.
very, very few and far in between. And it is an option, and it's probably a great option. I should
Yeah, like
I
it's there. I mean, it also
Yeah,
really depends on the deck. Like I have
it's
such
true.
a range of Oracle decks, you know, some are going to be a single keyword and
Yeah,
might actually work in a spread.
yeah.
Others are like it's an affirmation type thing and
Right,
never
yeah.
want to put it. I'll often use a single Oracle as like the wrap up card for a tarot
Mhm.
reading, or like if the tarot reading's really stressing me out, or if it's confusing. Sometimes I find having a single Oracle card to like theme it all together can be
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
But I think it's like also my neurodivergent. So I have ADHD and I'm also on the autistic spectrum. And I think that one of the things, at least about my experience of the autism part, is that I tend to like put things into rigid categories and then
Mm,
forget that you can go outside those categories.
yeah.
So this like comes up in, you know, in different ways. Like I think one of them is forgetting that there are different options to use. I think another one is like when you said, oh, you can use Lenormand differently. And I was like, you can. And yet my brain is very much
Yeah.
like Lenormand's for this, tarot's for this.
Right, right. No,
Yeah.
totally hear you, yeah, and I think in general for me, I don't gravitate toward Oracle, just as a whole. I
Mm,
do have a strong preference toward tarot. Now
okay.
I have created a couple of my own, like, Oracle or Oracle type decks, and that's different because they're,
For sure.
fashioned to me personally, but,
Of course.
so yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm on and off with Oracle sometimes. I feel, so
Yeah. I think it's just because there's so many options too. It can really bring in the shiny. Like
yeah, it's
you
true,
know,
yeah.
I definitely very frequently will buy an Oracle deck because I'm like, I haven't seen that keyword on a card
Yeah.
before, you know? And you're like,
Yeah,
well, I
yeah.
really need a card for X. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you feel like your reading style has changed since, you began in, like, 2017 or
Oh, yeah, a
yeah.
lot. Yeah, it's gone through a number of phases, I think. When I like I said, when I first started, you know, I was really attached to like the system and structure. And I think that and I was really interested. And funnily enough, this has actually continued. I'm always such a nerd about combinations of cards. Like I could talk all day. Like I recently for my mental health, honestly, I stopped using Instagram really. But when I kept thinking that, oh, I should just do this like every week. I should just pull two random cards and then tell you how they relate to one another.
Mhm.
Because I find that to be like such a fun exercise. And I remember when I was starting that I would be frustrated that there weren't resources or as many resources on like, okay, well, how do you combine X and Y? Or like what are
Mhm.
the besides the kind of known families of like the lines of the majors or what have you, like what are other ways to look at cards in combination?
Mhm.
So when I first started reading, yeah, I think it was a lot of just like getting interested in how cards could go together. And I tracked everything heavily and I did daily draws for probably a year. I did weekly draws for longer. And yet I realized at some point that like I wasn't really doing spreads or like full readings. It was just because it felt like I had to do something in my tracker. And so yeah,
Yeah.
and so I let go of doing anything regularly and then had to go through the kind of like shame spiral of, you know, forgetting to pull tarot at all for 3 months and then being like, what are
Mm.
you doing? Why have you, you know, you're talking about tarot, but you're not reading tarot. I'm sure there are
Mhm.
other folks who've had this experience of like being
Oh,
really
yeah.
public, talking about tarot, and then you're like, it's like, well, what repeaters are coming up for you? And you're like, I haven't pulled a card in 3 months. And so I moved into a much more, I guess, my style. It was like I had to move away from the regular draws and then at the same time remind myself that I could pull cards just whenever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remind myself that like I don't need a big life challenge. I don't need a so I started getting
Yeah.
into that and doing more like no question readings or like
Just like
I'm
a
just feeling
freestyling.
this way. Give me some
Yeah.
cards, please.
Yeah.
Trying. I was really inspired by my friend Catherine because she is very visual and very intuitive in reading cards, and I am not naturally. And so one
Mm.
thing she pointed out to me is that for the first few years, I would never actually, I'd look at the image, but it would almost be like a decoration to the card meaning I knew in my head. I would
Mhm.
forget to look at what was there.
Mhm.
And now I would say my reading style is much more, how do the images and the cards relate to one another? And
Mhm.
sometimes that is totally separate from the quote unquote meaning I know.
Yeah.
But it's also just over time, getting to really trust intuition on things.
Yeah.
I know it's like a very sort of tried and true answer, but very true. And then when I read with, reading for others is something that I probably started doing 3 years ago and then have only been doing professionally for, I guess, a little over a year.
Okay.
And when I read for others, I think like the thing about my style is that I'm very like conversational with it. And I'm very, again, non-predictive. So I don't do any predictive reading. But I would say that I tend to kind of blend tarot itself with a more just kind of everything I've learned from various parts of life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of just kind of like, oh, well, here's this concept like from mindfulness, or here's this from psychology, or here's this from, and then I just find my intuition will kind of lead me towards like, hey, we should be talking about this. But because it's non-predictive, it means that I can, ask them, like ask the person I'm reading for, the querent,
Yeah.
how does this land with you?
Right.
And I think
Right.
before I would have been so like offended if, they didn't resonate with something. And I think I've
Mhm.
moved to a place where now it's like, oh, okay, I see, like we need to go in this direction. So it's
Gotcha.
very
Yeah.
meandery and conversational.
Yeah. So it becomes more of a two-way dialogue instead of just, the tarot reader just
Yeah.
throwing.
And it's part of, I think this about astrology too. It's like you can have the system and you can know that there is a whole menu of interpretations. With a tarot card, you can, often think of 5 or 6 just basic interpretations for a single card. But like getting to understand the way the way we make meaning as individuals, and so the way certain things will hit for us, is such a deep part of why I think tarot quote unquote works,
Mhm.
is that you can see things and you can react to things. And I often, with clients and with myself, pay more attention to the reaction to a card than to the card. And that
Mm.
reaction might change over time, but like
Right.
that definitely. I mean, I had somebody at work, I would just give readings for fun at work. And I had somebody be like, okay, I want a tarot reading, but I'm really afraid of the death card. I'm like, yeah, okay, we know. Like, have a seat. Blah blah blah. Death card isn't just
Right, right.
yeah,
The
it's
whole
fine.
spiel.
And then
We
I
all
feel like
know
the
it.
tarot deck was trolling this poor person because I
Mhm.
think he got 10 of swords, 3 of swords, and like 5 of cups.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, okay, sis, I'm gonna treat this as if it's a real reading, but I think maybe the deck is just laughing at you. So just take that. Like it's like, oh, you don't want death. Well, look what else I got for you.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm sure he loved that reading. So hi to anyone coming
Yeah,
into the
hello,
chat
Star.
that I haven't said hi to. Hi, Ange.
Oh, we're
Let's see
making
who else.
people one
Hello,
more time to
Star. We
Norman.
know we have a seat. Exactly.
I mean, it's like how many people are like, I'm afraid of the death card. Like,
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So yes, Lenormand. It is. I do enjoy it. I do enjoy Lenormand. I just yeah. I need to get back into it. I feel I'm getting in the mood again now that we have been talking about it.
there you go.
So all right. Let's see. How has your experience been having a YouTube channel?
Mm. YouTube has surprised me in a lot of ways. When I started it, in probably, I guess it was 2018, when I started my YouTube, oh yeah, I bet it was with the January, the Ethany Challenge. What is it actually called? 31 Days of Tarot.
30, mhm.
I think it was around then that I started. And it was interesting because I'd been blogging for at least like a decade, and then also had that food blog. So like 15 years, probably been blogging for a really long time. And the whole time I've been blogging, even though I'm totally a writer and that's the mode I generally would identify with, I found that the consistency that was recommended was always really hard for me. Like putting out a blog post every week, putting out a, whatever it is, whatever your rhythm is, the consistency was just this constant challenge. And so when I started the YouTube, it was so much just for fun. It was so much just that like I wanted a place to nerd out about my thoughts about this thing that no one in my life knew anything about. Right. And because of that, I think passion, like it made it really easy for the first, I want to say I kept a good 3 years doing like 2 a week. Like that was my rhythm was 2 a week. Yeah. And I was never running out of things to say. I was usually batching them in advance, but for the most part, I stuck to that 2 a week. And so that was really just like, it was beautiful to show myself that I could do it, show myself that I was capable of that consistency. Yeah. And then I left for a while, or paused for a while, because, and this has been like a theme kind of throughout my public life, is that I was trying to balance showing up and being radiant and being bright. My life path number is 1. It's a magician, is like my birth card. So it's very much a like, share and be public. Trying to balance that with, what is my sense of accountability as a white person. And when I started my YouTube, I had been in a side career for probably about 10 years. The blogging I was doing at the time was called Radically Queer, and it was mostly like not political exactly, but like human rights related topics, talking about identity, talking about queer life, talking about racism in queer communities. And I did a lot of speaking. And so I do college speaking, trans 101 type stuff, and then a lot of like anti-racism within white queer communities kind of stuff. And I really like doing that. And my approach had always been kind of peer education, right? That it's important that there are like white folks with other white folks who are, helping everyone along. Yeah. But I did have this period of time, I think, when with my YouTube, I just started to kind of like question whether what I was putting out there was actually benefiting people. But it was also, I needed to go through my own kind of like personal process of my tendency is very self-deprecating. So my tendency is to be like, oh no, like I should get away from this. I should not do this. Like it's inappropriate. And I was grappling with a decision to pull back from public speaking and to not be sort of in the spotlight on those topics. And so when this new kind of spiritual tarot that came in, it was a little scary to start something, because I was like, okay, am I sticking to my values? Does this align? Is this right? And the reasoning I had at the time I started was, yes, because I'm really not sharing as an expert. I'm sharing as a learner, and I'm like sharing my process. I'm documenting a journey, but I'm always very clear that I'm not trying to educate anyone. And I took some time off around, I want to say it was 2020. It was George Floyd. It was, I had been through a lot of instances of police brutality and the response to it. But I think because the George Floyd one was magnified in a, I think, slightly different way, in a way that seemed bigger. All those questions kind of amplified, and I felt really uncomfortable being in public. And where I landed on that, and why I, have a business and in public in the first place now, because obviously that's changed, right? Is realizing the ways in which the self-deprecating was actually itself a product of racist capitalism. Like realizing the ways in which trying to make myself small, like, wasn't actually serving anyone. And then seeing how it was rooted in shame that comes from my own marginalized identities, that comes from being like neurodiverse and trans and everything else. So it was a weird intersection of those things that, working through my own like personal healing, I was able to then come back and say, oh no, like I think actually, like, sometimes talking about yourself or sharing your experiences like is what brings people in and like gets people interested and
Exactly.
and such. So yeah, that was a kind of deep
Cool.
answer.
No, that's very cool. Very cool. So, would you consider yourself a collector, a tarot collector?
Hmm. I mean, I guess by virtue of the fact that I have a collection. Sure.
Awesome.
That's like I
Okay.
strongly relate to, but yeah, I have a pretty big collection.
Okay.
I
Yes,
have
I do.
100, probably 120 tarot and oracle decks.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like the
Yeah,
beautiful like
it's a big,
shells of like, yeah, in your
yeah.
videos. So, and would you? I mean, I think I've heard you like use the term soul deck in some of your videos. Do you prescribe to that term? Like, how do you? There's been a lot of talk about it. I mean,
Yeah,
I personally don't find it like triggering or any. Like, I don't have any innate
yeah,
problems with it, but some people
yeah.
do. Some people really do.
And I haven't. I remember there were a lot of videos going around about that a couple of years ago. With YouTube, I've been like even when I wasn't on it, I was watching, but I've called down the number of things I watch just because
Mhm.
YouTube is an area where I'm very completionist and I want to watch everything.
Everything.
So I'm not necessarily up on like all the current opinions about things, but yeah, my general thoughts about soul decks are that the idea resonates for me, but it's never been a single deck, which I think is how I've heard a
Yeah.
lot of folks talk about it. I'm polyamorous. Like I'm not going to choose one anything.
Yeah.
like certainly not a tarot deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for me, the deck that is most that like I would call my soul deck that I don't actually have in my hand, but at some point is a slow hauler.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just like being trans and from the South. It's like kind of a no-brainer. It feels the most to me.
Mhm.
But I've also learned so much from not having it. Like I feel like it
Mm.
seeded so many things. I mean, some negative, right? It seeded my initial collecting impulses because it was
Mhm.
available for like the first maybe 3 months I was into tarot, and I
Mhm.
saw it and I
Mhm.
kind of glanced at it and was like, oh, it's a multi-artist deck. I don't like those.
Mhm.
So it's a good lesson in like not having like how the deal breakers sometimes, it's a much more cohesive multi-artist deck. And I didn't look closely enough to see
Mm.
that. I just sort of
Mhm.
saw and wrote it off. And then yeah, it's my only probably big tarot regret, but it has taught me a lot about FOMO and
Yeah.
initially my response was like, now every time any deck comes out, I must buy it because the next slow hauler, and like
Right.
being able to move out of that
That's
and
headspace,
also see
yeah.
that like a deck can benefit you even if you don't have it. So I get readings
True.
with people who have it. I I visited a friend recently that let me read with it for the
Oh,
first time I've
awesome.
got it in my hands. So
Huh.
I really feel like that deck has lessons for me that are just weren't accessible through owning it. But
Yeah.
I have a few others that I relate to similarly.
Yeah. Okay. See, Mixtress Ray says, "You are so right, Avery. I always tell my
Mhm.
clients it's more important, yeah, how you react to
Yeah,
the cards than what I say about the cards."
yeah,
So true. So true.
very cool.
So then, any decks right now that you're currently in love with?
Yeah,
What is
so
it?
I pulled out a couple. One was a surprise. So this is the Lillifer Tarot by Marion
Hmm.
Constantine. If anybody knows the Reclaim Oracle, which is the black and pink. Um,
I think I do. I've heard of the Reclaim. I'm sure
okay.
if I saw it, I would
Yeah,
recognize.
the Reclaim. I think Lisa's really into it. I think some other people are. The Reclaim as an oracle deck, I was obsessed with. It's very self-care vibes, and also because it's black and pink, and I love black and pink together. But it's kind of like blob people. And the Lillifer is the same. It's kind of like blob people. And so I just backed this without asking any questions. I just saw
Oh,
that
okay.
artist was making another deck, and I was like,
Yeah.
whatever, I'm backing it, right? But I didn't
Uh-huh.
necessarily expect to connect super strongly with it. And
Gotcha.
it is just such a clear reader. To me personally, it's one of those ones where you're like, I can't quite explain why this is so great, but it is.
Mhm.
Oh, good, the tower's on the bottom. That's cool. But so it's blob people again. So we got
Yeah, I see
whoop,
that. Okay.
high priestess. So it's blob people. I
I see
actually
this
have
one.
found that I really like the blob people because they don't feel gendered.
Uh-huh.
They feel but they also feel very, oh yeah, there's a Lucifer and a Lilith card as
Mhm.
extras. which I
Okay.
love, because Lucifer is actually, sorry if I offend anyone, but this is actually an archetype I work with personally. This is not the devil card. There is a separate devil card.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lilith is like really, for me, kind of a queer femme energy. But yeah, I find the blobs really relatable, and like it's fairly gentle.
It looks gentle. Is that watercolor?
Probably. I know nothing about art. I'm gonna say
I don't either, which is why I asked.
yes, somebody who knows
like,
about art could
maybe
tell
it's
us. But yeah. So it's not that there's nothing like here's death.
Oh, okay.
It's not that like everything is happy necessarily, but like most of the swords, the harder swords cards, I'm trying to find an example, have tend to have like rain clouds on them, but it goes together really well, like in that style I mentioned of kind of having things side by side and seeing like how the energy is moving. Oh, here's an example. Where you can really see things flowing through, but then also just some of the majors, it's like I will pull. So I've been pulling pretty much just majors from this. Like every time I pull, it just happens to be a major. Here's an example that I pulled this and just went, because I was like needing support, needing to know, and I just got the star, and it says I know just above the third eye there.
I see that.
And I was like, so it's very much like I'll pull them, it'll just be like, I'm okay. You mean I'm really okay? Oh yeah, sorry. I was not saying Joey, just for clarification, because Joey's saying, well, Lilith is everything but gentle. No, definitely not saying that Lilith is gentle. The deck overall. In fact, I'm trying to find the Lilith card. There it is. Well, okay. So this is maybe a little bit gentle for a Lilith card, but it's a wolf, embracing a wolf. And then you have, there's like, this is a snake.
Yeah.
But this I like because it feels very like outsidery, like the idea of hugging. And I think of the wolf, I mean, similar to the strength card, I think of the wolf in this as part of, to be fair, I do not know the Lilith like myths and such, so maybe the wolf is something I would know if I knew that. But to me, it feels very outsiderish of like feeling like more relating more to something non-human.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right. And then are there any that you have that you are having like a hard time maybe bonding with?
I was also going to briefly mention one other one, which is the Outsider Tarot. I don't know how much traction this has been getting on YouTube.
I don't think it's been, I mean, I've heard of it.
Yeah, which is why I just want to mention it. Because so the imagery, you will probably feel sometimes like, how does this relate? That's actually a more relatable example. But things are renamed. So for example, the Fathom of Lights. But they are, what I like about it is that the guidebook sets up this whole system where, okay, so here's an example. This is the Sixth of Eyes. So this would be swords. So here's this image, and you get this if you just know tarot and be like, what? Okay, six, like I don't see a boat. I don't know what's happening. I mean, you sort of like, it's a hot air balloon, so you might start to get there. But then if you go to the guidebook,
that's a hot air balloon? Okay.
Maybe.
Wow.
Oh, maybe not. You're right. I don't know what it's supposed to be. But if I go to the, this is my.
I mean, I can see the hot air balloon thing. I wouldn't have.
Yeah. So this is my study deck right now because it is hard to get on its own. But each card, you get an image of the card, then you get a quote from someone, and then it's, in addition to being the card that it is, it also has kind of an outsider that goes with it for the minors. So with the Six of Eyes, it's the hacktivist. So that's the kind of like energy or archetype that they're going for, is the hacktivist.
Okay.
And so it has this whole take on that whole story. And then it has some keywords, and it actually explains the astrology, which I like. I also like that it says what's in the image. So the outsider, I'm just going to read a little bit from the guidebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
The outsider of the Six of Eyes is the hacktivist, a brilliant renegade whose frontier is the internet. The hacktivist laptop is connected to the internet cloud through a pair of intertwined snakes that form the, I never know how to say this word, caduceus, maybe, of Mercury. ruler of communication. The internet cloud, stirring with activity, is compromised by 6 eyes that have been opened by information unlocked and leaked by the hacktivist. An anonymous vigilante, the hacktivist, wields immense power to breach security protocols and exploit weaknesses. Your true identity and location are often impossible to discern. So it goes on. But, you know, you have that description, and then you start to think, like, okay, so like a hacktivist, oh, all right. So like the 6 of Swords, it's like moving away from mainstream interpretations of things, right? It's like it's picking it up. It's maybe, you know, and so I find that like as a thought exercise is really interesting. And then just as anybody who identifies as kind of outside, as, you know, being queer, being neurodivergent have definitely been meaningful. A lot of the, with this deck, a lot of the cards are folks you'll recognize, kind of like icons. And then some of them are quotes from people you'll never have heard of. And so it's a nice mix. And I think it just, it's not like an everyday deck, but I've been pulling a card from it every morning and then reading the guidebook and like getting to know the card.
Wow. Okay.
That's my second one. And then, so yeah, for your question about what hasn't connected, I thought of one, but it's a little different, because in general, the problem I have isn't that I start reading. It's not that I start reading with a deck and then don't connect. It's more that I don't start reading with the deck. So I have so many decks that often there are some where like I'm just not as excited about it, so I don't find myself reading with it. Gotcha. But what I did have as an example for this is I got the Alleyman's Tarot. So I saw the 9 million ads about this thing.
Yes.
And I did. And I admit when I saw it, I was like, is this a scam? Like it was, because it was so, like the ads were so like.
A lot of people thought it might have been a scam. Yeah. But
yeah. No. Well, I can tell you it's a real thing in a hand at least. So, and the reason I went for it was because it's the same publishers that did, I think it's the same, if I remember this right, same publishers who did like the normal tarot and, well, I guess it's just a bunch of different versions of the normal tarot. Anyway, I have 2 of the versions of the normal tarot, which is a weird deck that has nothing to do with tarot really. But there's this playfulness and this like creativity and fun to the company that I was kind of like, I'm curious. And I never would have gotten this to read with. I got it because I thought, oh, it's cards from different decks. Therefore, I'll have all these example cards, and I like to put cards up like on my altar or just I want this card, you know, in front of me right now. Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, it's an easy way to get, you know, 80 something of those cards. And it came, and I gotta say, I mean, it's fine, whatever. Here's the box.
It's fine, whatever.
Well, you know, so many. I can never remember how to open this box. So maybe I'm just gonna sit here trying to open the box, and I'll not be able to show you any cards. Oh, right, it goes like this. Okay. No, I just literally threw all the cards. I threw the cards on the floor, everybody. But that's awesome. But yeah, so when I started thumbing through it, it was just like a lot of these. There weren't a lot of decks that I knew or was interested in. It turns out a lot of these cards are not from a deck. They're an artist who made one for this, which would be fine. It's just a lot of them are obscure and random. And then there's a lot of the kind of old school style, like this.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not my thing at all. There's a lot of these. So there's maybe like 20 cards that
are. Oh, yeah. Very kind of Marseille-ish. Yeah.
Look. Yeah. Which is like, I guess, good for, you know, a diversity. But yeah, so you go through it. Like, this is good. I like this one a lot.
Like, the lovers. Okay. Yeah.
Some interesting lovers, you know, but some of them aren't labeled. So like, what's this dog? Don't know. It's a card.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, like here's something that has it's hard to even tell if it's Greek or Hebrew because it's blurry, but like,
oh, geez,
2 of Wands.
2 of Wands, I would think.
But maybe. Like, you know, somebody who doesn't read Marseille, and yeah, some of them you can tell by the pips basically. But yeah, there's just a lot of more vintagey look, and that's just so
not your thing. Aesthetic. Yeah.
That one is inappropriate to show on the internet. Also, some of them are inappropriate to show on the internet.
Okay.
Or like, here's one from The Outsider, right? Great, but I have that deck already.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wasn't finding a lot where if I were to go for a random, I need a Hierophant or something to display, I wouldn't necessarily go to the one in this deck.
Gotcha.
So I think it could be fun for people who want to do like an art project or something.
Yeah.
But
No,
I definitely
totally.
would not try to read with it. It's like 90 cards.
Yeah.
This is the one I was showing was the Alleyman's tarot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Heather, my sales skills could use some
Right.
whatever. There was one thing I wanted to respond to that came in while I was talking, which was
saying the normal tarot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the normal tarot is cool. It's its own thing. Once again, but it is cool. Somebody said something about. Oh, I just remarked that Joey mentioned I have Lilith conjunct my Pluto, and I was just going to say directly to Joey, that sounds like an intense life. Lilith conjunct Pluto, that's exciting. I have Lilith conjunct Mars and Venus, which I consider very queer. And yeah, I know not everybody's astrology. And
I was like, I will take your word on that, Joey and Avery, because I don't know what those things
the
mean.
world's quickest. I mean, there's mythological things with Lilith and Pluto as well, but but speaking just in terms of the meetings, Pluto is very intense energy, and Lilith is also very intense energy.
Yeah,
and they are intense in similar but maybe contrasting ways. I always think of my Mars, Venus, and Lilith being together as not that there's anyone. I don't believe there's any one astrological placement that points to an identity. But I do feel like Mars, Venus, Lilith is a very genderqueer thing, because it's like the man, the man symbol, the lady symbol, and then you have like Lilith, who is kind of like femme, but like fucking things up femme. And so, yeah, I love that.
That's funny. Yep, I hear you.
So,
I hear you, Heather. I don't think I even understand some of those words individually, to be quite honest, but I'll get there one day. I'll get there one day.
Astrology is like its own whole rabbit hole. I feel like there's also not a higher bar to entry, but like a higher bar to feeling confident. I feel like tarot, you can get confident quicker. Maybe that's just.
I tend to agree with that personally.
Yeah.
But, so are there any, before we wrap up here, are there any questions that we have for Avery? You can put them in all caps and we can just see. But I mean, just in closing, do you have any advice for somebody starting out in tarot or astrology?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one thing I would say, maybe that's actually a good point, since a lot of folks here might be tarot and curious about astrology, but not necessarily know it yet.
Yep.
I would say there's so much to like. So one of the core themes of my own business and everything I do is self-trust. And I think that and I use the Hierophant as a like archetype for that. Because the way I relate to Hierophant is not as like a figure on the hill kind of like traditional religious authority, but more as a reminder that the spiritual authority, that your values, everything is within you. And that's a big part of everything I do. And I think that when I was starting out with any discipline, really, like it's easy to kind of be like, okay, what are the rules? Like, how do I, let me learn this, let me understand this. And it was almost freeing sometimes, I think, to realize that there is no one answer for a lot of things. And so I'm sure folks have had this experience with tarot where you tend to relate to a card differently. It's the same thing like with astrology. I kept asking and asking and asking, like, how do I handle this specific technical thing? And it was like, nobody, just do what you want. Nobody knows. And like for something like astrology that's so ancient, has so many forms and conversation, and it can feel like, I don't know, that your intuition is just as good a resource as you're learning the vocabulary. And of course you're learning them, it's not like, oh, I just decided that this planet means this. But like once you bring all that in, I think that the real power comes from that, like trusting yourself, and that about what you need to work with the tool for you. I like to, in like doing teaching, I'm not that interested in like teaching the tarot 101 or like teaching astrology 101.
Mhm.
But what I will do in this like unlearning productivity course is an example of that. It's that I will take a theme and then kind of be like, we're going to use these ideas as archetypes to get into that thing. And so I think it's important to realize that like both tarot and astrology are totally accessible without learning to read them, that you can find little, you know, things to latch onto that are meaningful. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I hope to do, like with my own work, is reach people who wouldn't necessarily be like, yes, I'm going to pick it up. Although if you are going to pick it up, I have recommendations. I think Lindsay Mack is great for tarot and for astrology. Who's my favorite astrology teacher? I don't actually know, but I will say that there's some really amazing queer people of color doing astrology that I would shout out. I have a whole entire list, but I'll quickly say a few would be Ari Felix, Kira, what is Kira's last name? Kira Taborn, Ari Felix, EY Washington. Those are just a few names. There's about 20 that I am really into.
Cool, awesome.
And some of these, like, especially like younger folks, are just really thinking interestingly about, astrology.
Awesome.
So,
Heather has a question.
Yeah, your business offerings. Yeah, thank you for sending me the softball.
Exactly, it's like
because it's so funny. I've been in business for so long, but like it was so many cycles of like figuring out what am I actually doing that it's been a little slow start. So you can absolutely go to my website. Again, it's queermagical.com. The best thing to do, honestly, I have a newsletter. It is completely free. I do like long form essays in it. So it's not just like marketing. It's like every week you'll get, here's some thoughts about time, or here's some thoughts about, and so that can be a good place to kind of like just get a feel. And on the website as well, you'll see there's a link to work with me. So I do one-on-one. I do tarot readings. I'm currently offering something that I call a Neptune session, which is 90 minutes. And it's just a really intuitive space where I might pull from a tarot, I might pull from astrology, I might, whatever I intuitively feel called to. But it's all about like making a safe container for exploring change in your life. So yeah, that is there. Like I said, there will be an announcement about a course in probably a week or two. And as far as social media, I mentioned that I did leave Instagram. I'm Queer Magical on Twitter and Avory Faucette on YouTube. And so both of those are places.
And I should have that information in the description box below. So go check that out. Thank you, Heather. Beth is saying astrology is very yes, math. Exactly. I don't math. I don't math at I don't.
Okay. Yeah. If anybody's afraid of astrology because of math, I will put you at ease. Is there math? Yes. Do you have to do the math? No.
Good.
So,
okay.
Yeah, there's a lot. I would say the hard part of it is that there's just a lot of aspects, not aspects like an astrological aspect, a lot of parts of astrology. So much so that I can't even say a word without it having a technical meaning in astrology. But there are a lot of moving parts. But you do not need to know the math at all. In fact, I have personally struggle with, I can't see directions and shapes very well. It's a complicated thing, but it's some sort of version of issues with spatial reasoning. And so I don't care that I'm a professional astrologer. Every single time I'll have to be like 1, 2, 3, right? It's fine. Most of it's done for you by a computer. And
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, don't worry too much about that.
Awesome. Let's see what else.
Oh yay, heading my channel. Thanks, Lisa.
Hi, Sarah Waterchild Tarot. Nice to see you. Oh, thank you so much, Joey.
Kira Taborn. Yeah, it's KIRAH. TAB.
Actually, I should write that down.
Yeah, TABOURN. Yes, I just typed that on my invisible. That is how I spell. In case anyone was, it could also be like Taborn. I'm hard of hearing. I also sign, and sometimes when I can't remember how to spell something, I'm like, spell it.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. We go back with Avory a whiles.
That's so funny. Yeah, Heather, you probably have.
Yeah.
And Heather, you'll be excited because you remember Unproductive, the series, and you liked it. You were like the one person I remembered, and I haven't done it in a while. But that's going to be the name of the course that is coming to life, and then I'm going to bring that series back to life. So
woohoo!
Yeah, if anybody is like struggles with like getting things done and being kind of, you know, having to live in the real world while being a spiritual person and gets tired of like white dudes with MBAs giving all the productivity advice. That's there as well.
Very cool. Very cool. All right.
I actually, for the new people, I should mention, my channel has something called Practical Astrology 101 on YouTube.
Yes. Oh yeah, I've seen those.
And I've been doing a foundation series. So if you do want,
I have those bookmarked. Oh yes.
They're kind of long, but you know, it's an hour video, but it goes into the details of planets, houses, you know, everything. So
awesome. Very cool.
Nice to meet you too, Joey. It's nice to meet all the people that I don't know.
Yes.
I have been kind of like not as like paying attention as I used to.
Yeah, I know. I'm still juggling myself, learning how to, but thank you everyone in the chat for coming. And thank you to Avory for coming on. This was so much fun. And yeah, anything else you want to add before we leave?
Okay. I don't think so. Just a reminder to everyone, you're exactly where you need to be.
There you go.
Don't be hard on yourself.
Aw, that's great. Well, thanks everyone once again. And if anybody wants to come on and have a nice chat, let me know, hit me up. And yeah, until the next time, much love and take care. Bye.